This is the Fearless Pricing Podcast, where we meet and talk about real-life pricing experience. I'm your host, Filip Fucic. Pricing is hard. This is a podcast for fearless professionals and those who would like to feel that way. It's an unfortunate truth that most service pricing is created using either guesswork or copying other people's guesswork. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Fearless Pricing Podcast. Today on What I Should Have Charged, we have the lovely Deb King. Hi, Deb.
Hi.
Thanks for coming. Deb King is an award-winning coach's coach and advocate for conscious business. She has spent the past 2 decades coaching, mentoring, training, and collaborating with individuals worldwide. In 2020, she co-founded the Wisdom Playground, a groundbreaking business incubator found innovative approaches to achieve better results with greater ease, joy, and impact. Deb describes herself as a happiness ambassador and a passionate advocate for music, travel, and overall well-being. So, Deb, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Tell us your What I Should Have Charged story.
Oh, the what I should have charged is such a cool concept because it's made me think I should have charged more than what I have. Like it's made me go, imagine if every single thing that we've done, we put the price up, how good that would have been. And of course, I should have worked with you sooner and also read your amazing book sooner. But what I should have charged, it's been an interesting journey because I am a recovering overgiver, chronic overgiver that's trying to recover and not do that so much. And so often I have not charged or not charged enough and made that mistake many times. More recently, because you want a specific example, is interesting because we, in the Wisdom Playground, actually work with coaches and people who have wisdom to uplift humanity in some way to actually create packages around what they do and use the structure that the top people on the planet use that most people don't know. And this helps them be aligned with charging higher prices. Now, what's really cool when we do this, when we're training them, we use all the tools that we recommend, and that's been awesome. What the mistake that we made was following the training, we also had a membership, which was a lower priced offer. And what we should have charged is a lot higher for that, and also implemented the tools we use in our higher priced packages, what we teach coaches to do, and use that even in the lower price membership as well, because what that does is help everyone understand the value and the progress they're making, they fully understand the value they're getting, and also helps them see what's possible in continuing. And when we don't charge enough, when we didn't charge enough, I feel like we let ourselves down, but we also let our clients down by actually having them not actually be as present to the full value that they were getting. Because what happens is we help people transform, they turn into a butterfly, and then the butterfly forgets what happened in the cocoon. So unless we point out really powerfully what happens in that cocoon, our clients forget the value of working with us. What we should have done was charge more for that, but also incorporate the tools so that they really did see the value. They really did, not saying none of them saw value or anything like that. I'm talking about see the full value of all the areas that all the skills and knowledge they developed in areas that they didn't know before they started. But by the time it comes to the end, that's embodied and they forget they didn't know that at the start. I think you know it.
Oh, yes. So value communication in general is a harder slog than we give it credit for because of something called the curse of knowledge or the curse of expertise, the same thing. Once you know something, it's very hard to empathize with, not in a feeling sense. Simply, you can't really see the picture anymore that people see when they don't see it. And that includes you or me or anybody that goes through your wonderful transformation that you do. Once they're out on the other side, they barely remember how they were going in. So I work in modules and I have this nasty habit of sending people the first module. So I record everything. So sending people the first recording that we did of our first module, simply to see just how different they sounded back then and what their questions were and what their doubts were. That's like a 2-month, 3-month time span. It's not a long time. but the transformation is great. The
That's
way
a good idea.
So just compare what you just now told me, just like everything else in my program was developed because I realized, just like you, that people don't remember how it was like in the cocoon or in the worm phase.
Yeah, it's a really interesting one that we can often take for granted. We forget that our clients do not see things the way we see. We have so many more distinctions. They talk about, I've heard that example that Eskimos have a whole like huge long list of different ways of talking about snow and ice. And I don't know if it's actually true, but it's a great metaphor, right? I don't know many because I don't really spend a lot of time in the snow. However, when it comes to different things to do with the coaching business, and I know a lot of distinctions that in general most coaches don't know. And it's important that we value that whatever our zone of genius is in the area that we have the expertise and experience, like for you in pricing, like the nuances that you have around that, really like a ton of them. And the average person, until they work with you, will not know many at all.
Yeah,
And that's the same for any of us, whatever industry we're in.
absolutely. The problem is also that when you don't know what you don't know, as you mentioned, you also don't necessarily think there's much to know. Coaching is just asking questions. Could you just send me the questions, please? Expedite the process.
You can get an AI to ask you a lot of questions these days. So
Oh, yeah.
that is one option. But yeah, depending on what you really want. And like you say, there's so much we don't know what we don't know. And that comes back to also pricing from the point of view of knowing what we're selling. Like we need to sell the solution to the actual problem that the client has right now in the domain of what they do know.
Yeah.
They're going to get so much more than that. They're going to get all the juicy stuff that we know they don't even know they don't know yet. But they're not interested in buying that. That's not what the price needs to be actually around the thing that they care about, that they're willing to spend time and money on, that they need to desperately want to either solve as a problem or create as a desire, right?
This is a distinction that I know how to name rather than the problem. So you want to help them with the problem, the underlying problem, the cause, right? But they come to you with a headache or a cough, which can be nothing and it can be life-threatening.
That's true.
When I'm saying there's a difference between a symptom and the underlying problem. However, if you ask me, so there's a mistake I can talk about. If you asked me 3 years ago what I did, I would have said strategic marketing or strategic marketing alignment, which is enough to get most people's eyes glazed over. As long as I've talked about this, and I've pitched this a lot, I was a part of BNI back then, so I've pitched this 50 times a year minimum, and it's true. That's what I do. I turn people's outputs into other people's inputs or help them align this. And then people say, oh, that's interesting. I don't really need that. I can see you do. I can see the bandages. I can see the hurt. I can see the frustration. You do need, but that doesn't help. So how I came about calling this thing fearless pricing and talking about pricing is I realized that the main symptom of people having their market disjointed, disaligned, was that they couldn't charge as much as they should be able to. So that's a symptom that people immediately recognize and say, oh yeah, I know I should have charged more. And then once they hear me talk for a while or once they read something of mine, now they say, okay, so this guy sounds like he knows what he's doing. And now I can talk about inputs and outputs and markets that I simply wouldn't get that opportunity if there wasn't the recognition of a symptom first, if that makes sense.
True.
So do you know what would be the symptom of somebody needing your services?
It could be that they're not getting the results they want. The clients aren't staying with them. Like they're not continuing. They're not referring. They're not perhaps as turning into raving fans in the way they should be. The coach actually isn't totally clear on how to articulate what they're doing. So they're a bit wishy-washy. But really for us, it comes down to results. And I think that's such an important topic that it's not really talked about that much. It's almost like it's accepted that People will go on all sorts of personal development coaching and training and then not get the result and tend to blame themselves when actually it's not always there. Like it might be that the person delivering it haven't delivered. That could be a case, but it could be just the fact what I'm talking about in terms of having the tools to show the progress that the clients have made. So the clients actually remember the full value that they got. So they're not walking around feeling like they didn't get what they wanted. They're seeing it because the coach is smart enough to have tools to show lots of different areas in the way that they've progressed. I think you do it in a really powerful way from the point of view of using the video of the first session to then be able to, like, for them to see themselves. That's really cool. That's a great demonstration in terms of what we teach is being able to measure two different streams of data, let's say, one being what is the reason the client came to you? Like you said, the symptom. So what is their desired future, their goal? Have a measuring tool around that particular topic. And then also have a measuring tool around the skills and knowledge that the coach is bringing to the client through that journey. So all the stuff they didn't know before they started, it's almost all that wisdom and all the skills and knowledge they developed during the journey. That whole piece is something that can be measured, even if it's intangible stuff. It's really cool. So it's a long answer to your question. Was it just what's the symptom? The symptom?
Okay.
The symptom is they're not getting the results they want in their business.
And so when you say the reason that the client came is just, there's a distinction between the real reason and the symptom that they see. Just, we were talking about distinction. So there's a distinction that I know how to name. Awesome. Before we continue, I'd like to suggest two things. Firstly, if this is the first time you're tuning in, I'd love for you to subscribe and hear the next story in a week. And second, if you feel you could do with a little more fearless pricing content, look in the show notes for the link to the popular, short, and sometimes funny biweekly newsletter. That's it. Let's get back to the show. Why did you choose to share a recent experience that you did?
Probably because I don't have the best memories.
Yes.
Yeah. As I said, actually, my whole career is full of these. I should have charged more. I definitely have done too much for free. I think that, and I've done things that have been more on the cheaper side. And I think that, again, not necessarily valuing myself, the value I bring, valuing even the client. So what I've realized, when people pay a lot of money, they pay attention. Can we use your book as an example?
Absolutely.
Have you got it there? It is such a genius thing because the value is in this book. You believe in it so much that if they don't get the value, they can have their money back, right?
Yes. So Deb is talking about the book that I co-wrote with Klaus Rashted that is $560 with a full money back guarantee.
$560.
Yes.
It is genius.
Yeah.
Absolute genius, right? That is a way more than the average book. Okay.
Yes.
We would agree. It's quite a substantial investment, $560 for a book. But how cool. If someone buys that, they value themselves enough to go, yes, I am going to buy this. I'm going to read this. I'm going to apply it and I'm going to get more value than $560 worth because otherwise I'm going to send it back and get my money back, right?
Absolutely. That's the idea.
And I think that's really cool because if we look at everything we're doing from that perspective and go, actually, this is worth heaps of money, you need to pay for it. And if you don't put a good price, if we don't price things well, then often people don't value it. There's so much free stuff out there and typically we don't value it.
It's a good instinct. Don't get me wrong, is a misapplied good instinct. Because in the physical world, in the world of material goods, if something is cheap or free, it's usually because it's worthless. It's just like that. If you get, I always go back to potatoes. I don't know why, but if you get potatoes that are 75% off, there's probably a good reason for that. You're going to throw most of it away, right? If it's 40% off, you can pick it up and they're starting to go a bit. There's a reason. If a house is much cheaper than every other house that is sold around it, there's a reason for it. There's mold or it's far away or it's noisier because there's an establishment close by. There's a reason why things are cheaper, right? Now, with services, it's even harder to tell. At least I can pick up the potato. At least I can look at the car. I can kick its tires. If a coach is cheap, so I've heard people charge this and that, and my friend pays this much, and this is like half as much. There's probably a reason for it. Maybe there isn't. Maybe that coach is just bad at pricing. But the instinct is there's probably a reason for it. And when we overshare, don't get me wrong, sharing is wonderful and it's also a great instinct. But in a sense, that shows that you don't have anything better to do. And there's a difference when I have the sense that the expert is doing something out of favor, and difference when I think they're doing the same thing out of desperation. But if it seems like you're doing that because you're not sure if your price is too much to the value. Look, if you're not sure, the client is going to be even less sure because you should know, right? So this is why oversharing actually devalues it. So it shows, as you said, that you don't value your time. But even worse than that, it indicates that maybe there's a reason why you don't value work, right?
Yeah. There's a certain capacity of receiving that the more we can work on expanding our ability to receive money for the value we bring, there's that whole piece in there. And I've done a lot of work on myself around that because that has been a really, I guess, money has been my biggest classroom this lifetime. So it's been an ongoing thing. But there really is something there for anyone who is challenged with charging a lot of money for their services or even any money for their services, of actually realizing that it's important that we do have energy exchange, that there is a giving and receiving in everything. And when that's out of balance, things don't work so well. When we allow someone to pay us money for the value we give, we're actually giving them the gift of doing that. That is something like, it is a beautiful thing. That's been like hard lessons I've had along the way to learn to be able to charge higher prices for my services, because for some reason I didn't have that self-worth, even though I was always good at doing. I really know I was a really good coach from very early on. I've been doing it for 20 years, but early on I was still a good coach. I mean, even better now, obviously, after that many years, but it's really interesting to see what a journey it has been to learn to be okay to receive money for it. Amazing.
The only thing I think, so I've debated a lot about what price is fair and what does that even mean. And I think it has nothing to do with costs. Again, we're talking about prices for expertise-driven, expertise-based services. I'm not talking about price of steel here or financial products or whatever. I'm talking about this. The only thing that needs to happen for the price to be fair is that long term. So after a year, you remember that exchange with a smile, and so does your client. What a good deal that was. It needs to be a good deal for you, and it needs to be a good deal for them, whatever that means. And even if somebody else said, yeah, but they should have. Look, again, within the context that I'm talking here, I don't think objective value is a thing. All value of expertise-based services may be broader, but within this, I'm certain, is subjective. It simply is. As long as the subjective value of this deal, of this exchange, is positive and overwhelmingly positive in both directions, that's all that you need to do for the price to be completely fair. And if that's $1 million, even better.
Yeah, I'm a big believer in the win scenario. Everyone is feeling very delighted is a good outcome, or the ideal outcome for sure. It is such an interesting topic.
It's also challenging because we see our value differently because we know so much, right? We know so much about our topics that there's always more to be said. There's always more to be prodded, but the clients see just a part of it. And if they're fine with this, then you need to be fine as well. You don't have to add value when nobody asks you, because if you do, then they start thinking maybe I am missing something. It's not needed.
It's really cool. It's just confirmed for me the power of having the measuring tools that can really help a coach or a service provider understand the results they're getting for their clients, and in multiple ways. And the clients can see that too, because then it just does make the pricing more easy. It means it's almost making the results more tangible and the value more tangible. There can be obvious results that something happened, that's the outcome result, but I'm talking about all the other results that lead up to that. Where sometimes so let's take an example. Say a coach was helping someone find the love of their life, right? There's the end result that they've found their love, but even on the journey to finding, that coach could have brought massive value to that client in terms of their communication skills, how much they love themselves, how they're presenting, showing up in the world with everyone, and all these different areas that are so valuable, even on the journey before they've found the love. It's an interesting thing to really get connected with results, because that's really what clients are buying anyway. They're not buying coaching or buying whatever the service is. They're buying whatever the result they want, right?
Absolutely. And they're definitely not buying hours. Just like people buying books are not actually buying pages. And this is an important distinction, because most of us start in corporate and it's about hours. So how many hours? And corporate will do what corporate will do. I understand that sometimes there's no alternatives because of how the system works. But we have the ability to say, I don't care how many pages my book has. It's not about pages. It's about what it does. So I priced my book as a course because it basically is one. It's in a book form.
It looks amazing. I love it.
But this was just me trying to practice what I preach along with my co-author, because what we wrote in there was, who cares what your costs are? Not your clients. Not really. Not just if they're high in a bad place. It's none of their business. And they don't really want the pages, and they don't really want the hours when we're talking about coaching. So when people make offers, they sometimes make this mistake of, you can have this package that's 12 hours for 1,000, and then this is 25 hours for 2,000, and then this is 75 hours for 3,000.
Oh, yeah. So we definitely, we do not teach that at all. Like that, you're right. That's a big mistake coaches make, thinking that a package is those blocks of sessions for a certain time amount, for a certain money amount, often discounted sessions. Totally wrong. It's about the journey. We use the example of, like, you could be taking your client on a super yacht, or is it like a little rubber dinghy that's like really crap, right? It's taking them from where they are to where they want to be. And there's a whole journey involved, and there's more to it than just whacking a bunch of time into it.
Absolutely. Because in a client's mind, look, are you going to solve my problem or not? Are you going to help me find the love of my life or not? If you are, then the minimum is, of course, the one that I want. And because, of course, you as the expert, that the result of the first, second, and third are not the same, right? But to them, it sounds a bit the same, and this is more money and more time. I always say, if a lawyer could help you solve your problem in a year or in a month, which one is more valuable to you? The month, of course. It's more valuable.
That's right. Fast track. Yeah.
Yeah. I had a lovely Canadian client, and she said, I'm figuring out that my 3-month program can actually be done. It's actually done in 2 months. The last month, I'm a glorified accountability buddy, right? So I'll just reduce that, and I should probably reduce the price. I said, would your clients like to be done in a shorter amount of time or a longer amount of time? Shorter, probably. Okay, so your logic is, I'm sorry, my dear client. I'm sorry for making this better. I'm going to reduce the price to make it up to you. She said, if you put it that way, it is that way. That's the way it is, right? So that doesn't make sense, because they didn't pay for your time in the first place. Being done in less time is actually also less costly to them, because they have other things that they would like to do. If I could solve somebody's problem by snapping my fingers, which I'm not even close. But if I magically got the ability to do that, I would still charge the same because it's not even about effort. And I think this is something that needs to be said. There's a sense in us that says if something is expensive, it has to be hard for me. It doesn't. It has to be effective for the client. And if a client could see me work hard, let's say they install a camera or bossware and they see me sweat over their stuff and they get nothing out of it, they would probably pay me because that was the deal, but they wouldn't be happy about it. And they definitely wouldn't rehire me or recommend me. And on the other hand, if they could see me not try, if they could see me swing a magic wand, wave a magic wand, and get them everything that they wanted, that would be strange, maybe. But if it's done, they got everything that they would be delighted by this. So they don't really want me to sweat. They don't really want me to have costs. They don't really want me to strive my hardest. They would just want the thing done. So it doesn't have to be hard for you. And it's not going to be hard. After 20 years, you can do some things that terrified you, I'm guessing, when you just started, when you were 2 years in, something terrified you that is nothing that you would blink twice at right now. Because of course, but it's no less valuable now because you could do it without thinking. More valuable.
More valuable.
And
I think so.
I don't know if you would agree with this, but one of the problems with services based on expertise is that we get automatically better by doing our stuff because it's not cranking something out in a machine. We're doing that and we're editing the neural pathways and then learning. And now your price may be higher than it was 20 years ago, but it's probably nowhere near as higher as the value is. The value is 20 times more and the price is probably not unless you were really undercharging back then. And that also happens. I think it's a dangerous thing, right? Cool.
Yeah. I'm very aligned with everything you've said. It's more valuable when we have more experience, when we can do things faster, when it doesn't necessarily takes less effort, all the things. And it's making sure that we actually recognize that's really cool and not try to think that we need to make our prices cheaper because it's easier.
Let me try to put you on spot here. And it's completely fine. So why do you think we need things to feel hard for them to feel valuable?
I think it's conditioning. I think we are absolutely conditioned in our society that it's meant to be hard. We're meant to work hard. We're conditioned to, we don't have enough time, we don't have enough money, don't have enough sleep. I'm not enough. So we're in this not enoughness society and that we need to work harder and we need to consume more and we need to do this. And we're in this thinking and doing world rather than actually being and actually living from our heart and our joy. And that I think is shifting, but I think that in general, most of us who've grown up in a Western society particularly have been conditioned that you're meant to work hard. And we're in an employee mentality, all of that. Yeah.
Absolutely the employee mentality. And it's very, I think I'm going to print t-shirts, your client is not your boss. There's a difference. There's a similarity, but there's a difference because the boss controls 100% of your revenue yearly. And also they have some additional responsibilities when it comes to you than the client does. And the client ideally doesn't control that much and they don't have the responsibilities. If you get sick, you don't get paid. It fills roughly the same role in your life, but there's a difference to how you need to develop the image of their influence on your work, right? Because your boss needs to know how many hours it took you to do this or that. But they also need to understand all of this because they're going to pay for it. I have a client who is a performance coach. She's wonderful. But what she needs time for clients is to decompress. It's not hard for her to work. It's hard for her to get away then from that work so that she can function as a normal part of society. So she schedules 2 hours a day of just roaming the forest
Love it.
because she needs to decompress. But it's very hard to charge this directly to a client to say, yeah, I'm going to charge you my walking around the forest time.
That's another reason why it's not about charging for the hours, right? It's charging for the whole package and the result rather than specific hours, because there's more hours than the actual face-to-face hours anyway. And yeah, it's a really good point you bring about the boss thing, because if we can all remember, we're actually all in charge. We get to control whether we're in a job or not. Actually, we're still the one that's in control, and we get to choose what we focus on and how we show up and all of the things. And what's exciting, if we're not happy with where we are right now, we can change it. So if we're not happy with what we're charging, we can absolutely change it. And that's exciting. It can happen like that.
It's something people need to be reminded of. And this is one of the purposes of the show. Because once you start, you go and look for some going rates and you settle in, okay, that's it. I need to be cheaper first because I'm not that good yet. And then I'm going for the going rate, and costs are going up. The going rate is not. What can you do? Such is life. No, you're in full control. I have one of the things that I had to completely be okay with is that I can't really help employed people. Not really. I have some tips, but I can't really help employed people because they're not in charge of their price. But self-employed people are. Although they might think there's nothing to talk about, there usually is very much, because usually what happens is that somebody works with me and then ends up with a 40% higher price tag, and they barely lose any clients or simply rotate from worse to better source of clients.
That's so true. So it's the people that pay more often are easier to work with. And the whole thing about valuing all of the things we need to do in business take time, and that when we're getting a certain rate from a client, it's covering all of it, not just that, I don't know, part that we're doing. Like there's so much more to consider when we do price.
Sorry, there's a difference. You have to charge for all of it. That doesn't have to end up in the bill though. And this is why I'm usually against over itemizing of the bill, because you go to a restaurant and yes, you get the bill. You got the dish and I got the dish, and yes, but you don't get just exactly this much flour and this much salt and this many potatoes, and nobody cares.
And this much electricity.
Oh,
and
yes.
And
union dues.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. Nobody cares. I don't want to see this. I don't need to see this. I don't care. I'm not going to go and calculate and say, but you could have sold me this at 40% lower.
Your eggs are too expensive.
Yes, where are you getting your eggs? Get some cheaper eggs, man. I would say that you need to say, okay, so this is the service, and this is a month of service, a quarter, or simply this many sessions, and fine. But what else is included? Sometimes it's useful to mention it, but sometimes it's useful to not mention it, because the decompressing you need it. They would have to be a coach to understand that decompressing is needed, and they're probably not. It's not worth their time or yours to get them to fully understand that they need to also cover just charge them for whatever they think they're paying, something that will cover everything that needs to be covered. Everybody's happy with this. Again, it's not unfair to not mention this. If their problem is solved and they're happy about it, there's nothing else that you are supposed to do in order to be fair. There's nothing else.
Absolutely. That's definitely something, if someone's new in business, they really need to understand. It's not, there's so many more things to consider that probably before we start business don't realize that are involved. And it's really interesting.
Just end up the talking point that you said, that high paying clients are sometimes better. Of course, up to a point. However, there's a good reason for this, I think. Because if I feel like I'm getting a bargain, oh my God, this is actually changing my life, right? This is a good value. And I'm not paying so much for it. Again, maybe there's a reason. if you're getting a bargain, but you don't really understand why you're getting a bargain, then you're going to be more suspicious of it. You're going to try to watch like a hawk to see what happens, waiting until the other shoe drops. It's a normal instinct. It's a good instinct in most conversations, in most situations, but not in this one. So I don't think people are mean or people with less means are more mean. No, absolutely not. It's a good instinct that you are triggering by not charging what it's worth. Thank you very much for you being on the show. Can you tell me where can people find you?
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It has been awesome. Love your podcast. Love what you're doing with your business, your book.
Thanks.
Big fan. For those who are coaches and healers and leaders, have wisdom to share with to uplift humanity, maybe trainers or consultants, subject matter experts, people like that who would like to connect, we have some incredible resources in our website, thewisdomplayground.com. So THE wisdomplayground.com. And would love to connect them on all the socials, love to collaborate, love to play. So,
cool.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me.
People can, of course, find me on LinkedIn mostly. I'm soon going to be all over the assorted social media. This is going on YouTube as well as the podcast stations. And of course, the fearless-pricing.com. People, thank you very much. And I'll see you next time on What I Should Have Charged. Bye. Thanks for listening. If you would like to hear more, simply subscribe. Until next time, your host, Filip Vojic.